Continuing on our journey through the Pikmin franchise, next up is Pikmin 3 Deluxe, the Switch port of the 2013 Wii U game. Pikmin 3 was highly anticipated by fans, as it had been nearly a decade since Pikmin 2 at that point, and it's almost been a decade between Pikmin 3 and Pikmin 4. 2033 for Pikmin 5, I suppose. Pikmin 3 eventually received the deluxe treatment on Switch, just like many other Wii U titles, and saw lots of its Wii U specific features retooled to work with the one screen, as well as all DLC included and some extra features like different difficulty levels and badges, which are effectively just achievements for players to work towards. To start things off, I want to talk about the main gimmick that Pikmin 3 is focused around. It surprised me when playing through all three Pikmin games that each one kind of stands out on its own. While improvements are made from game to game to improve the overall experience, each game also stands out from the others by having a special feature that belongs entirely to it. And in the case of Pikmin 3, this special feature is the multiple controllable captains. Multiple captains isn't a new feature entirely, as Pikmin 2 introduced Louie as a second captain for players to control, but as I mentioned in my review of that game, this feature felt more like a bonus than something that actually changed the way I played the game. In Pikmin 3, however, this feature has been fully expanded out, and controlling all three captains is now mandatory for progression. By going to the co-pad screen while playing as a specific captain, you can now instruct them to automatically walk to any location you've been before, essentially removing the journey from the player and only handing them the goal and action to perform, whether it be fighting an enemy or collecting an object. With this ability to maneuver multiple captains at once, it means multiple objectives can be achieved at the same time. Given that the maps in Pikmin 3 are significantly larger than they were in the last two games, with multiple rooms found through caves and other loading screens, this is a much needed feature for keeping the game from getting repetitive due to the constant back and forth from the onion to the current objective. The game essentially becomes a micromanagement game of ensuring all three of your captains and the Pikmin they lead are being as productive as possible, swapping between each when required and bringing them all together for specific puzzles. Now, I said in the Pikmin 1 video that I wouldn't consider the Wii U exclusive features for my review of Pikmin 3 because it's the Switch version I'm reviewing. But I wrote and recorded that review before I'd begun playing Pikmin 3, and now I realise that it's kind of unavoidable to discuss, because this game was clearly made with the Wii U gamepad in mind. When transferring the title to Switch, much of the Wii U gamepad's features were turned into an additional pause screen. You have the standard pause screen with the plus button, and then an in-universe pause screen with the co-pad, mapped to the minus button. With the ability to have two screens showing different info simultaneously, it was far easier to multitask in the Wii U version of the game, as now in the Deluxe Edition I found myself constantly having to pause the game in order to manipulate my different captains around the map, and this really broke the flow of gameplay. Another issue I found with the co-pad being mapped to the minus button, although just a contributing factor to it rather than the sole cause, is that Pikmin 3 is a far more complicated game than the first two titles. In Pikmin 2, it was a simple button press to swap between Olimar and Louie, another to blow a whistle to separate all your Pikmin up, and a button to use either sprays. But in Pikmin 3, these are all now mapped to the same button and require an additional input, a directional movement with the left stick, even though the icon looks more like a D-pad. And those previous buttons are now used for other things, like a charge attack. It made the game a lot more complicated, and I found myself constantly making mistakes or wasting time because I would press the wrong button. That said, I can't complain too much about this because many of the new features introduced in the jump from Pikmin 2 to 3 are major quality of life changes. There are some simple additions now, like captains being able to automatically pluck Pikmin in the ground without the player needing to hold down the A button, and the charge attack essentially being an easier way to perform the guidance maneuver from past titles. But by far the best quality of life improvement is around how the Pikmin are now organised and accessed. All Pikmin share a single onion in Pikmin 3, which makes it much faster to call out the Pikmin you need and makes it much clearer how many of each Pikmin type you have out. You can also return and call out new Pikmin at the same time, which speeds up the process. And then when you have your Pikmin, you can cycle through them with the R and L buttons. In past game you could only do this by already holding down A to throw a Pikmin and then pressing the R button to swap between types, and it was very easy for your captain to still accidentally throw the wrong Pikmin type because it happened to have wandered closer. In Pikmin 3, this no longer happens. Regardless of where your Pikmin are in the horde, the captain you control will only throw that type until it runs out, or you swap between the types with R and L, and you no longer have to be in the throwing stance to do this, so you can easily prepare for combat in advance. Blowing the whistle to separate your Pikmin up also allows your captain to keep whatever the primary Pikmin type was in your control at that moment, making it easier to keep weaker Pikmin out of danger and separate the Pikmin types up to distribute between your 3 captains. There's just a lot of good quality of life improvements all around, even if some of them come at the cost of a more complex control system. And let's talk about the Pikmin now. Red, blue and yellow Pikmin all return from previous games, but the purple and white Pikmin only appear in the game's side content, mission mode and bingo battle. I won't really focus on those modes in this review, but what I will say is that they are quite fun little additions to the game that add some multiplayer elements to Pikmin 3. In fact, this entire game can be played in co-op, which I didn't do, but it makes sense that it's here given the game's central gimmick is on multiple characters. Anyway, back to the Pikmin themselves. All the returning types retain all of their special functions from past games, like their elemental immunities, but now every Pikmin can dig just as well as the others, a feature that the white Pikmin got a boon in during Pikmin 2, and every Pikmin can now carry the returning bomb rocks, something that was exclusive to yellow Pikmin the last time they were a mechanic. Once again, blue Pikmin are slightly more useful than the rest, but the game gives them to you so late, that basically at the penultimate battle, that you'll have done most of the game's puzzles without them, which is an interesting way to balance Pikmin type use. Yellow Pikmin have also received a significant increase in usefulness simply through the increased use of electric-based puzzles in this game, with one entire boss being centered around the mechanic. There are 2 new Pikmin types, Rock Pikmin and Winged Pikmin. Rather than being connected to anything elemental, these Pikmin find their usefulness in combat and how they navigate the environment. Rock Pikmin are heavy hitters in combat, similar to the purple Pikmin, and can stun enemies with ease or knock them out of the air like punching a seagull as it lunged from my fish and chips. Meanwhile, Winged Pikmin are pretty weak compared to other Pikmin types, similar to white Pikmin, but their ability to fly makes them great for aerial combat, and in combination with the new charge attack, it makes taking down flying enemies or enemies on walls a much simpler affair. Then in terms of movement, Winged Pikmin can fly, obviously, and this allows them to take shortcuts when carrying objects back to the Onion, or just avoid water altogether by going over it, which makes them almost as useful as blue Pikmin for reaching late game areas. Rock Pikmin don't have any specific movement gimmicks, however they are the safest Pikmin to use when it comes to carrying objects back to the Onion, as they don't get killed by attacks like boulders, instead just getting buried in the ground. Rock Pikmin are also needed to break crystals open, which can open new areas or uncover fruit to bring back to the Onion. Fruit are the main collectible of Pikmin 3, as the game's plot is around the planet Copite nearly starving to death due to bad management of their resources, and the 3 heroes, Alf, Brittany and Charlie, arrive on the Pikmin planet in order to get as much food as possible that they can then bring home. This fruit is also used as a gameplay mechanic, as a way to keep the characters alive. In a similar idea to the 30-day timer of Pikmin 1, players now need to collect fruit in order to make juice to prevent your team from starving to death. Every day, the team will consume 1 bottle of juice, and different fruits produce different quantities of juice, so finding it is important to avoiding a game over. It pushes players to not waste time and try to min-max their days, but isn't nearly as stressful as it was in Pikmin 1. In fact, it's not really stressful at all. Pikmin 3 is absolutely the easiest Pikmin game of the bunch, and I played this game on ultra spicy difficulty for this review. I'd previously beaten the game on normal mode for the Wii U and hard mode on Switch, which turns out is actually the same difficulty. Normal mode on Switch is actually a new easy mode in disguise, which is hilarious as it really doesn't need it. So for this playthrough, I went for ultra spicy mode. This mode limits the amount of Pikmin you can take out to 60 instead of 100, gives you shorter days, halves the amount of juice you get from fruit, and Pikmin drown a lot faster. Despite all of this, I never struggled, and it only took me 3 in-game days extra to beat this time around than on my hard mode file. Factoring in the fact that you can easily rewind time to a previous in-game day if you think you've made a mistake, and you are looking at a really chill time with this title. Regarding time to beat, while Pikmin 3 isn't as short as Pikmin 1, it's certainly nowhere close to the length of Pikmin 2. While I acknowledge that this is because Pikmin 2 is full of cave systems that take up most of the game's length, Pikmin 3 is still a rather short game, and it's not one that feels like it's meant to be completely replayed like Pikmin 1 did. Instead, it just fills the game with tons of collectibles in the form of badges and hopes players will waste time scoring the map for these, especially the hidden murals, which I didn't even realise were a thing until this new playthrough. Unfortunately, the collectibles of Pikmin 3 aren't nearly as fun as the ones from Pikmin 2. I really enjoyed all the goofy names and descriptions Olimar and his ship gave to those everyday items we have in the real world, and while Brittany attempts to do the same with all the fruit you can find, it just isn't as charming to me. At least Louis is back to tell me how to cook and eat all the enemies in this game, in which there are a lot of. While there aren't as many enemies as in Pikmin 2, I think the variety is better here in Pikmin 3, and the bosses especially are another step up. Bosses were a lot more obvious in Pikmin 2 compared to Pikmin 1, but in Pikmin 3 they are given the same kind of gravitas one would expect from a boss battle. Huge, unique encounters that take advantage of a special mechanic in the game, like the winged Pikmin's flight or the returning bomb rocks. Especially the last boss, which is easily the best trial in the game. It reminds me of the final level of Pikmin 1, which was also a test of all of your Pikmin skills, but with more urgency added on, and the captain mechanic being used to its fullest. And really, all of these comparisons to Pikmin 1 is my main takeaway from this review. In this series of reviews, I wanted to see how the series had evolved from each game to the next, but Pikmin 3 doesn't feel like an evolution of Pikmin 2. Yes, some elements introduced in that game, like electricity for yellow Pikmin and multiple captains, come back here and are expanded on, but a lot of Pikmin 3 feels more like an evolution of what Pikmin 1 was trying to do. It feels like the developers started with Pikmin 1 as a base again and added to it, only bringing some of what Pikmin 2 introduced to the series, while cutting just as much. I don't think it's an accident that Rock Pikmin and Wing Pikmin really feel like purple and white Pikmin again, just with some slight alterations. Rather than a full step forward for the series, it's kind of taken 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. And while gameplay wise I think Pikmin 3 is objectively the best feeling, Pikmin 2 is still my favourite of the 3 games. Presentation wise, however, Pikmin 3 is the best and it's no contest. This should be obvious as it was the first game in HD, but after playing the ports of Pikmin 1 and 2, which didn't do anything to change how they looked other than make it cleaner, Pikmin 3 feels like a whole different experience. The visuals, the music, the way the story is told, it's all far more cinematic and beautiful, and I was very impressed from the moment I booted up the game. While presentation isn't usually something I focus on in a review like this, as you would expect it to get better as technology does, I felt like I had to mention it in this case. It's just that much of a glow up. But maybe Pikmin 4 will be even better. I've yet to play the demo that came out as I wanted to play all these games in order. But now that Pikmin 3 is out of the way, I can finally jump on that before Pikmin 4 launches this coming Friday. While I'll need some more time to get a Pikmin 4 review out, that doesn't mean there won't be a Pikmin video launching next week, as there are some other games we should probably talk about. So with that, I want to thank all of our patrons. The $5 plus tier should be on screen right now. Let us know your thoughts on Pikmin 3 in the comments below, and if you want to help us grow in this competitive YouTube space, it would help if you could watch another video from us straight after, or subscribe so that you'll always remember to return to the source.